Now, there's fears China is working on doubling its nuclear warhead stockpile in the next decade and is plotting to take over bases in countries to support future military attacks. A report released by the Pentagon warns that China is in possession of one of the largest navy fleets in the world and is pursuing a nuclear triad. Joining me now is New South Wales Senator and retired Army Major General Jim Molan. Good to see you tonight, Jim. Is this a serious threat?
Peter, good to be here. Yes, it is a serious threat, and it's only one of many. And I think that the numbers are interesting in relation to the nuclear challenge that the Western world, the liberal democracies, the allies of the United States face. But the numbers of weapons, that is China perhaps going from about 400 weapons, nuclear warheads, to 800, whilst the Americans have got just under 6,000, the Russians have got just over 6,000, and there are 9 total countries in the world. I think the numbers are not as important as the lack of trust that seems to be developing in relation to China. Now, we in Australia, Peter, have got to be a bit careful about this. We don't want to go out there and saying there's going to be war or anything like that, because we've got ourselves into a situation at the moment where we depend for our national prosperity on trade with China. And that trade, we can see how vulnerable we are in that trade because the Chinese are using that trade against us. So we've got to be very careful. But the Chinese have, and President Xi have been saying for a long time, they want to try and produce a world-class military by 2049. That's rubbish. They have a world-class military now. And the advantage that they've got, particularly in relation to their navy, is that they don't have to run the world. They've got roughly the same number of ships, and they're probably approaching the American standards, the same number of ships as the Americans have got, but the Americans have got worldwide responsibilities. And this is a real problem for all of us. We tend in Australia, Peter, just to look at China and say, what a problem this represents. We keep forgetting to look at the United States, because the power that we all assumed once resided in the United States now, Peter, no longer resides there.
Jim, I've been dying to ask you that question. I mean, if you compare the militaries of China, and of course we've always known that the United States has taken, defence, very, very seriously. How do they compare right now when it comes to, numbers, personnel, just the general footprint that they have in their respective areas?
Well, the numbers don't tell the full story because it's what they are able to do. And let's go back to how the Americans express what their military force could do at the end of the Cold War. From 1945 until the early 90s, the American military believed that they put enough resources into their military to win 2 major wars and a minor war at the same time. And that's the key point, at the same time. They believed they could fight and win a war in Europe, fight and win a war in the Middle East, and they're the 2 major wars, and a small war somewhere else. From 1991, having been at war now in various places in the Middle East for a long time, having gone through that military killing organisation called the Obama administration, the last time the Americans put out a national security strategy, they reduced it from 2 big wars and a small war, win them simultaneously, to hopefully winning 1 war against China and holding in another small war. Now, Peter, that is a 50% or a 30% cut in capability. In the past, the Americans could come to any of their neighbours, their allies' aid. Now, I would believe that Australian strategic planning, we've just seen a beautiful strategic update from the Prime Minister. Australia's strategic planning should be that we must be prepared to fight on our own. We can't just hold out until the Americans come streaming across the horizon, because there's a fair probability that they won't be able to come.
And Jim, when you think about the rhetoric that's coming out of Beijing, it's quite extraordinary. Put aside the trade sanctions, which, of themselves are terrible. China says Australia is infected with fear, conjecture and paranoia. Where'd that come from?
Yeah. Well, it is quite astounding. The assertiveness and aggressiveness of China is amazing. In the military context, in the strategic security context, when you look at a foreign country, you say to yourself, do they have the intent to harm us? Do they have the capability to harm us? In certain circumstances, they now have the capability, and the kind of rhetoric, Peter, you were just talking about indicates that there is somewhere a level of assertiveness or aggression in their intent which is developing against us. I don't like it. And obviously, the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister have come out with a strategic update, and implied in that strategic update is that we are going to have to fight. And that's why we're putting $270 billion into our Defence Force and other security areas over the next 10 years. Question I've got, Peter, is do we have 10 years?
Yeah, wow. Good stuff. Jim Molan, thanks for joining us tonight. Always great to see you.
Thanks, Gleeson. All the best.